Empress Rena of the Lumeri Empire sat on her high throne made of pale silver stone. The throne room stretched wide like the inside of a giant hall, and blue lights ran along the walls. Every guard in the room stood perfectly still, holding long crystal spears that glowed softly. Rena was only 24 years old, but she ruled the Lumere with great confidence. Many worlds respected her, and some feared her confidence and sharp voice. She was known for speaking quickly and expecting everyone to answer her with the same speed. When someone failed to keep up, she often teased them, not out of cruelty, but because she liked to test the heart of the person standing before her. For the past month, she had heard many things about the humans from Earth. Some reports said they were passionate and loud. Other reports said they had strong feelings about honor and duty. Rena was curious, but she was also prepared to challenge them. She had always believed that the Lumeri were one of the most advanced and calm civilizations in the region. Humans, she thought, were probably too emotional to be steady allies. She expected the young human soldier, who was sent as an envoy, to show the usual signs of pride or frustration. She expected strong reactions to her words, and she even planned a few remarks to see how he might respond. Tom, the human soldier, entered the hall with slow and measured steps. He wore a simple dark uniform without many decorations. There were no medals on his chest, and he carried no weapon. He seemed to understand that the Lumeri Palace was not a place for showing off strength. His posture was firm, but respectful. His eyes focused on Rena, but not in a harsh way. He did not scan the room for danger, as many warriors did when entering a foreign hall. Instead, he walked as if nothing threatened him. He stopped at the center of the hall, placed his right hand on his chest, and bowed his head. A biver a bow, a dever a rever, a revenance, and an arn, and brennan a bet and rever this prophet. She waited for signs of fear or uncertainty. Instead, she saw calmness. His breathing stayed steady, his shoulders never tightened, and his voice did not shake when he spoke. "Greetings, Empress Rena," he said in a clear tone. "I thank you for granting me this meeting. Earth sends its respect and hope for peaceful communication." Rena leaned forward slightly. The human soldier's calm voice surprised her. She had expected him to sound nervous. She tapped a finger on the arm of her throne, thinking of her first test. "I hear humans speak boldly," she said in a smooth voice. "Yet here stands a soldier who speaks like a soft river. Are you nervous, or are humans simply quieter than the stories?" Satum lifted his head. His expression did not change. He did not frown, smile, or shift his feet. He simply answered in the same gentle way. "I speak as I was trained to speak in the presence of a leader. Peace begins with calm words." Rena almost smiled at this answer. It was too balanced, too soft. She wanted to see if he could be shaken, so she continued, "Many from your world have a habit of raising their voice when they want attention. I hope you are not the type who becomes loud when challenged. The throne room does not welcome noise." Her guards expected Tom to react. They had seen visitors lose their composure many times. Some people tried to defend themselves with pride. Some became angry. Tom did neither. He simply nodded. "I understand," he replied. "I am here to learn and to listen. It is not my place to raise my voice." This answer made the Empress pause. She had used a teasing tone, yet Tom responded with respect instead of frustration. She studied him again. His hair was neatly cut, his boots polished, and his movements deliberate. Everything about him suggested discipline. But it was not the harsh discipline of fear. It was the quiet discipline of choice. That made Rena curious. She wanted to know what shaped such a person. She stood up from her throne and walked down the steps slowly. Her long silver robe shimmered as she moved. The hall grew silent. Even the hum of the light seemed to soften. She walked until she stood only a few steps away from Tom. He kept his eyes forward, showing neither fear nor pride. "Tell me," she said, her voice softer now. "Why did your leaders send you? You are young. You wear no badge of high rank. Why trust you with a task like this?" Tom answered without hesitation. "I was chosen because I remain calm in tense situations. My commanders believed that would be useful here." Rena raised an eyebrow. "So they did not choose you for skill or strength?" Tom shook his head politely. "Skill matters. Strength matters. But peace often begins with patience. I am here for that purpose." Rena did not expect this. She began to walk in a slow circle around him, studying his posture and tone. She decided to try a different kind of test, a less gentle one. "What do humans think of the Lumeri?" she asked. "I heard some humans find us strange. I heard some humans believe we have no emotions. Are you one of those people?" Tom held his ground. "I think the Lumeri have their own way of feeling and thinking. I do not believe that makes anyone strange. I am here to understand, not to judge." The Empress stopped walking. She looked at him carefully. His answer showed maturity, but she still felt that he was holding something back. She wondered if he would ever show more emotion, or if he was hiding behind duty. She decided to press harder. "If I were to challenge your beliefs or question your world, would you stay this calm, or do humans hide their reactions when they want to appear wise?" The guards braced themselves. Rena's tone had sharpened. But Tom did not break. "I stay calm because anger will not help this meeting," he said. "My goal is cooperation. Losing control would not serve that goal." Rena found herself at a loss. She had pushed him several times, yet he refused to rise to any provocation. She felt a small wave of frustration, but also respect. His steadiness reminded her of the ancient Lumeri teachers who valued quiet strength. Their lessons had shaped her childhood, but as Empress, she had grown used to speaking loudly and acting boldly. Tom's presence brought back memories of those teachings, and she felt a strange echo in her thoughts. She took a slow breath and finally returned to her throne. Her voice carried a different tone now. It was no longer teasing. It was thoughtful. "You speak like someone who carries many lessons," she said. "Tell me, Tom, do humans often choose peace over pride?" Tom placed his hand over his heart again. "Many try," he answered. "Not all succeed. But peace is something we continue to learn." Rena listened to his words carefully. She realized she had not simply met a human soldier. She had met a human who represented an entire mindset different from what she expected. Tom's calm nature was not weakness. It was a kind of strength she rarely saw among her own people, who often believed that a loud voice showed confidence. Tom's quiet tone showed something else. Something steady. Something she could not mock. When the meeting came to an end, Tom bowed once more. He waited for the Empress to dismiss him. Rena nodded slowly. "You may leave," she said. Not in the sharp tone she had used earlier, but in a more thoughtful one. Tom turned and walked toward the doors with the same steady steps he had used when entering the hall. He did not look back. He did not hurry. He did not show any sign that her earlier remarks had affected him. Instead, he moved with calm dignity, leaving behind a hall filled with silent tension. Rena watched him go. She felt an unexpected curiosity rising inside her. She wanted to understand how a simple human soldier could stand before her with such peace. She wanted to know what shaped him, what taught him this quiet strength, and why she could not shake him with any of her tests. For the first time in a long while, Empress Rena realized she had underestimated someone, and that thought stayed with her long after Tom left the hall. The morning sun rose over the crystal towers of the Lumeri capital, painting the sky in soft gold. Empress Rena stood on her balcony, looking across the city she ruled. The view was beautiful, but her thoughts were not on the towers, the markets, or even the sky. Her mind returned again and again to the human soldier who had stood before her the previous day. She could still see the calm way he carried himself, She could still hear his steady answers, and she could still feel the strange shift inside her when she realized she could not rattle him. Rena was not used to feeling uncertain. She was raised to make decisions quickly and stand by them. Her teachers had taught her to trust her instincts. Her court expected her confidence every day. Yet Tom, a young soldier from a distant world, had created a quiet question in her mind. The question was simple, but powerful. What made him so calm? This question followed her as she prepared for the morning council meeting. Servants helped her into her formal robe of deep silver, and guards accompanied her to the council chamber. The council members rose as she entered, bowing with respect. They were older than her, experienced and skilled in diplomacy, but Rena felt oddly distant from them. She could not bring herself to share her thoughts about the human envoy, so she listened to their reports in silence. Trade shipments from the outer districts had increased. A minor dispute between two border villages was resolved. A request for additional security from a research station was approved. Everything was ordinary. Everything moved at the predictable rhythm of governing. Yet Rena found her attention drifting again and again. When the meeting ended, she remained seated while the council members filed out of the chamber. Only her advisor Lyra stayed behind. Lyra had been with her since her early years as Empress. She could sense when something troubled her ruler. Rena did not speak at first. She looked at the polished surface of the long table. Then she finally said, almost to herself, "He did not react." Lyra tilted her head. Who did not react? The human envoy. Tom. Ah. Lyra folded her hands calmly. You wish to test him. He passed your tests with quiet strength. That seems admirable to me. Rena gave a small, thoughtful sound. I expected him to break, or at least show some flicker of strong emotion. But he simply breathed and answered. Nothing shook him. Maybe he had nothing to hide, Lyra suggested gently. Rena lifted her eyes. Or maybe he is hiding something very well, Lyra smiled. Or maybe he is as calm as he seems. Rena did not respond. Her thoughts continued to circle around the strange human soldier. Later that day, she walked through the palace gardens with two of her guards. The gardens were large and peaceful, filled with tall, glowing trees and small streams that flowed like liquid light. The soft hum of nature usually calmed her, but today her thoughts were too active. As she walked, one of the guards said something about increased patrols along the upper walkway. Rena nodded automatically, but her mind was far away. She kept seeing Tom's expression as she tried to provoke him. The small, respectful nods, the steady eyes, the careful tone. None of it fit the stories she had heard of humans. She wondered if their stories were exaggerated or if Tom was simply different from most of his people. She paused near a glowing pond and looked down at her reflection. She had always been proud of her sharp thinking, yet now she felt almost confused. She disliked the feeling, but she could not deny it. She remembered something Tom had said. Peace begins with calm words. The phrase echoed in her mind, in a way no statement from her council ever had, as she turned from the pond. One of her guards stepped forward. Empress Rena, there is something you should know. After the meeting yesterday, the human envoy asked permission to visit the Lumri archives. Rena narrowed her eyes slightly. To read our history, yes. He wanted to learn more about our civilization and political structure. He asked politely and followed every rule. Rena felt another spark of curiosity. Most visitors came to present their own views, not to study hers. Tom seemed focused not only on peace but also on learning. She wondered if Earth had many people like him, or if he was unusual even among his own. She returned to the palace interior, but she did not go to her chambers. Instead, she walked toward the observation hall that overlooked the lower valley of the city. From the tall windows, she could see a group of visitors leaving one of the public garden areas. Among them, she spotted Tom. He was walking alongside a Lumeri guide. Listening with the same steady attention he had shown during the meeting, Rena watched him closely. One moment he paused to look at a sculpture made by ancient Lumeri artists. Another moment he asked a question, and his expression showed genuine interest. There was no impatience, no arrogance, no sign that he considered himself above anyone else. It was strange to see such humility in a soldier, especially one given the honor of representing his world. She watched until he disappeared from view, then turned away from the window. She had only observed him for a short time, yet it made her want to understand him even more. As the day continued, Tom's presence lingered in her thoughts. Even when she sat in her private study and reviewed documents, his calm face came back to her mind. She found herself reading the same sentence. 3 times before she finally pushed the documents aside, she finally said to herself, perhaps too quietly for anyone else to hear, "Why does he interest me so much?" She did not know the answer. Later in the afternoon, her personal messenger entered with a small device in hand. Empress. A report from the human envoy has arrived. He sent a message to his ship. Rena accepted the device. The message was simple. Tom had told his superiors that the meeting was peaceful, that he was treated with respect, and that he hoped communication would continue. There was no mention of her teasing remarks, no complaint, and no sign of frustration. He had summarized the meeting with honesty and calm. Rena read the message twice. She thought Tom might have exaggerated his experience or left something out to save face, but he had written everything clearly. It was strange to see such fairness from someone she had openly tested. She wondered if he always carried himself with such steady character. When the evening came, Rena returned to the balcony where the lights of the city glowed like stars on the ground. The cool air felt refreshing. She folded her hands behind her back and closed her eyes. Once more, she asked herself the question she had been avoiding. Why did his calmness affect her so deeply? Then she realized something important. All her life, she had been surrounded by people who tried to match her intensity. Advisors who spoke with sharp words. Leaders who wanted strong declarations. Visitors who raised their voices to prove a point. But Tom had offered something new. He had shown peace without weakness. He had shown respect without fear. He had shown confidence without raising his voice. It was something she had rarely seen. And because it was rare, she could not dismiss it. She thought back to the moment he left the throne room. He did not rush. He did not look angry. He simply walked with quiet strength. The memory struck her again. She whispered softly to herself. He walked away with more dignity than I expected. For a long moment she stood in complete silence. She felt the gentle breeze against her face, carrying the scent of the crystal trees from the gardens. As the evening lights shimmered across the palace, Rena made a decision she had not planned. She would meet him again, not to test him this time, but to understand him before she returned inside. She took one last look at the city and said under her breath, I want to know the truth behind that calm heart, and with that quiet realization. The Empress stepped back into the palace, unaware that this curiosity would soon lead to changes she had never imagined. The sun rose slowly across the Lumeri horizon, filling the palace walls with soft golden light. Empress Rena woke earlier than usual. She had slept, but her mind had been busy even in the quiet hours of the night. Thoughts of Tom drifted in and out of her rest, like a calm river running through a forest. She kept seeing his steady eyes, his respectful bow, and the peaceful tone he used even when she tried to push him with sharp words. When she opened her eyes, she realized something important. She did not want to ignore these thoughts anymore. She wanted answers. She needed to understand why a simple human soldier had stayed in her thoughts longer than any visiting leader ever had. Rena sat up, her silver hair falling softly around her face. She pushed it back and walked toward the large window that faced the palace gardens. The early morning breeze moved through the leaves of the glowing trees, making them shimmer like thousands of tiny lanterns. Usually this sight filled her with pride and comfort, but today it simply reminded her of the calmness Tom had carried with him everywhere he went. She whispered to herself, Why does he remain so steady in my thoughts? There was no answer. Only the gentle rustling of the gardens below. Rena dressed quickly and called for Lyra, her advisor. When Lyra arrived, she bowed politely and took her place near the window. You are awake early today, Empress, she observed. Rena nodded. My mind is full of questions. Lyra waited silently. She knew Rena well enough to let her speak at her own pace. Finally, Rena said, I do not understand that human soldier. He is not proud, Not nervous, not angry. He acts with purpose, yet with peace. It is strange. It is unexpected. And it stays in my mind. Lyra smiled gently. Perhaps he is different from those you have known. Rena frowned slightly. I meet leaders from many worlds. I speak with warriors, scholars, and diplomats. I have never seen someone so young hold himself with such balance. Lyra tilted her head. Does this bother you? Rena let out a slow breath. It does not bother me. It intrigues me. There is something about him I cannot explain. Lyra gave a thoughtful nod. Then perhaps you should learn more about him. Rena knew Lyra was right, but she hesitated. She was the Empress. She was supposed to be the one who understood others, not the one who felt puzzled. Later that morning, she walked into her private study. The room was filled with old scrolls, glowing tablets, and ancient records from generations of Lumeri rulers. The air smelled faintly of old crystal parchment. Rena had spent many years learning from these records, but today, none of them captured her attention. She sat down at her desk and looked at a small map of the surrounding worlds. Earth was marked with a soft blue glow. She stared at it for a long time. The stories about humans had always described them as emotional, strong-willed, and often impulsive. Yet Tom had shown none of that. He showed something else entirely. What have I misunderstood? She wondered quietly. A short time later, she called for one of her palace guards. The guard entered, bowed, and stood ready. Bring me the reports on the human envoy's activities since his arrival, she ordered. The guard left and returned soon with a small stack of records. Rena read through them carefully. Tom had visited the archives, the public gardens, the sculpture hall, and the learning chamber. Everywhere he went, he followed the rules with respect. He asked questions, listened attentively, and never acted with impatience. Rena felt another wave of curiosity. He did not seem like someone pretending to be peaceful. He seemed like someone who lived in peace naturally. She stood and walked toward the long window that overlooked the central courtyard. Many visitors from other planets passed through that courtyard each day. Merchants, scholars, diplomats, and explorers. Some stood tall and proud. Some looked nervous or unsure. Some acted with hesitation. Yet not one of them carried the calm presence she had seen in Tom. Why is his presence so different? She wondered again. As the day continued, she tried to distract herself with duties. She met with a group of researchers who wanted funding for a new science project. She spoke with a small council about travel routes. She reviewed plans for a cultural festival. But no matter what she did, her thoughts kept drifting back to Tom while meeting with the researchers. She suddenly remembered how Tom had asked the archive guide about ancient Lumeri customs. When she spoke with the council, she recalled the respectful bow he gave her when leaving the throne room. When she reviewed the festival plans, she thought of the peaceful way he walked through the public garden. Her advisors noticed she was quieter than usual, but none of them dared to ask why. In the afternoon, Rena took a walk alone in the private garden behind the palace. It was a place very few people were allowed to enter. The garden was filled with tall glowing trees that formed natural arches overhead. Small fountains sent light-filled water into the air, forming shapes like delicate ribbons. It was a place meant for reflection and calm. Rena walked slowly along the winding path. She remembered the moment she had tried to test Tom's patience by questioning human behavior. She remembered expecting him to defend himself loudly, but instead he had said, "I am here to learn and to listen." The memory made her pause beside a small pond. The water was so clear she could see her reflection perfectly. She stared at her own face, wondering why she could not stop thinking about someone she had only met once. Then she realized something important. Tom had shown her something she rarely saw from visiting leaders or representatives. He had shown honesty without fear. Many who came to the palace spoke in a way they thought would impress her. Tom did not. He simply spoke with truth. Honesty without pride, she whispered. That is rare. She dipped her hand into the cool water, watching the ripples spread across the surface. Each ripple reminded her of how Tom's calm presence had spread through her thoughts without warning. After a long, quiet moment, she stood and continued walking. When she reached the end of the path, she found one of her younger guards waiting for her. He bowed deeply. Empress Rena, there is news from the main hall. The human envoy completed his study session and is now speaking with one of our cultural guides. Rena's heart gave a small, unexpected stir. She tried to hide it. Where is he now, she asked, in the Hall of Voices, Empress. He is learning about our historical decisions and leadership customs. Rena felt a spark of curiosity again. The Hall of Voices was one of the most important places in the palace. It held recordings of former rulers who shared their knowledge with future generations. It was not a place many visitors chose to study, because the lessons were long and sometimes difficult. Yet Tom was there, the guard continued. He has been listening for hours without complaint. Rena nodded slowly. Thank you. You may go. The guard bowed and left. Rena remained still for a moment. Her thoughts raced quietly. Why does he study so much? Why does he listen so carefully? She turned and walked back toward the palace interior. Every step felt heavier with the weight of her growing curiosity. She reached the tall doors of the Hall of Voices, but did not enter. Instead, she stood outside, listening inside the hall. Voices of ancient rulers spoke from floating crystals. Their words echoed softly through the corridor. She recognized the tones of rulers who lived centuries before her. They spoke of justice, balance, and peace. They spoke of patience and understanding. These were the lessons her teachers had once given her. But she had grown into a leader who often used sharp words instead. And Tom was listening to these same ancient lessons. Rena leaned against the wall, feeling something shift inside her. She felt a strange connection between her past teachings and the calm way Tom behaved. She felt something awaken in her memory, something she had not thought about in a long time. Finally, she murmured, I understand now. He reminds me of what I was taught as a child. The realization made her heart feel lighter and heavier at the same time. She stood there for several minutes, listening to the echoes of the old rulers and imagining Tom standing inside, absorbing every word with quiet respect. At last she stepped away from the hall, but her mind was no longer confused. Her curiosity had grown stronger, but it had also become clearer. She now understood one thing with certainty. Tom was not simply calm by nature. His calmness came from a belief, a purpose, a choice. It was a part of who he was. The palace halls were quiet in the early morning, filled with soft light from the crystal lanterns hanging along the walls. Empress Rena walked slowly through the corridor, her steps measured and thoughtful. The previous night had been long for her. She had lain awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Tom, the human envoy, who had shown more calm and wisdom than many leaders twice his age. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing in the throne room, responding with balance, even when she challenged him. She saw him listening to the ancient rulers in the Hall of Voices. She saw the gentle way he asked questions in the gardens, and every time she opened her eyes again, she felt the same quiet curiosity growing deeper inside. Rena reached the inner courtyard and stopped near a tall archway. Behind the arch was the Learning Terrace, an open space where scholars gathered to study the old texts of the Lumiere. She had been told that Tom planned to visit there early today. She could have waited for him to come to her, but she chose instead to go to him. It was unusual for an empress to seek out a guest, yet she felt no embarrassment. She wanted to understand him, and the only way to do that was to speak to him directly. As she stepped onto the Learning Terrace, she saw several scholars reading at long stone tables. A few bowed to her respectfully, but returned to their work quickly. In the far corner, under the shade of a large glowing tree, stood Tom. He had a small data tablet in his hands, and he was studying it with deep focus. His eyes moved gently over the text, as if he wanted to understand every detail. Rena approached slowly. She expected him to break his concentration when she got closer, but he stayed focused on the tablet until she was only a few steps away. When he finally looked up, he bowed respectfully. "Good morning, Empress Rena," he said. His calm voice made her feel something warm inside. She nodded. "Good morning, Tom. You seem very busy for someone who is only a guest. I hope I am not overstepping, he replied. I want to learn everything I can while I am here. Rena studied him. There was sincerity in his voice, not politeness alone. She motioned for him to walk with her to a quieter part of the terrace. He followed without hesitation. They stopped near a fountain that flowed with light-filled water. The gentle shimmer reflected on the ground around them. Rena folded her hands behind her back and looked at him directly. Tom, I want to ask you something important. He nodded. I will answer honestly. Rena hesitated for the first time in a long while. Her voice softened. Yesterday, when I spoke sharply, you did not react with anger or fear. When I questioned your people, you stayed calm. When I tested you, you remained steady. Why? Why do you have so much balance at such a young age? Tom looked at the ground for a moment as if choosing the right words. Then he met her eyes again. Where I come from, Empress, many people believe that strength is not only in force or pride, it is also in understanding. My teachers taught me that peace begins inside the mind long before it appears outside. If I cannot stay calm, then I cannot expect others to trust me. Rena listened carefully. His words reminded her again of the teachings she heard when she was a child. Lessons on patience, clarity, and respect. Lessons she had followed once but had slowly moved away from as she grew older and took on the responsibilities of a ruler. She asked quietly, Did your world teach you this? Tom shook his head gently. Not the whole world. Only a few teachers. But I believed them, and I want to live by what they taught me. Rena felt something shift inside her again. The more he spoke, the more she understood why he stayed in her thoughts. He was not only calm, he had chosen calmness. He had built it through learning and intention. She took a slow breath. Tom, I think I misjudged your people. I expected pride. I expected strong reactions. I expected conflict. But you showed me something else. Tom bowed his head slightly. I am only one person, Empress. Every world has many kinds of people. I am here to show the best of mine. Rena felt her chest tighten with respect. It surprised her. She had expected this conversation to feel like a challenge, but instead it felt natural, peaceful. She decided to speak more openly. Do you know why? I came to find you, she asked. Tom shook his head. I did not want to assume. Rena walked a few steps toward the fountain, her silver robe trailing behind her. Because I want to understand you. I want to understand why I cannot stop thinking about your behavior during our first meeting. I want to understand why your calmness stays in my mind. Tom remained silent for a moment, then spoke with gentle clarity. Sometimes, Empress, when someone acts in a way we do not expect, it leaves a deep impression. Maybe that is why. Rena turned to him again. I tested you. I spoke sharply. I used the same methods I use with visiting leaders who try to hide their intentions. But you had no hidden motive. You simply acted with honesty. That is rare. Tom nodded once. Honesty is the easiest choice for me. It does not require fear or pride. Rena stepped closer, looking at him with genuine curiosity. Tell me, Tom, if I challenged you again right now, would you react the same way? Tom smiled softly. I hope so. I try every day to stay calm. Some days are harder than others, but I try. Rena felt a small warmth in her chest. It was not admiration alone. It was something more profound. She was discovering something she had not expected to find in a human, especially not one so young. She was learning what peaceful strength looked like before she could speak again. The soft sound of footsteps echoed across the terrace. Lyra approached and bowed respectfully. Empress, the council is ready for your midday meeting. Rena nodded, but did not move. She looked at Tom again. Will you meet me this afternoon? She asked. I want to continue this conversation. Tom bowed. I will be here, Empress. Rena left the terrace with Lyra, but while walking through the corridor, she spoke in a thoughtful tone. Lyra, I have found something rare in that human envoy. Lyra raised her eyebrows. And what is that? Trina looked ahead, her eyes sharp but gentle. A mind that carries peace with intention. I did not expect to find that. Not in him. Not in anyone. Lyra smiled softly. Sometimes peace hides in unexpected hearts. Rena did not reply. Her thoughts were full once again of Tom's calm face. The meeting with the council took longer than expected. They discussed trade agreements, travel routes, and new proposals for communication with other worlds. Normally, Rena handled these matters with sharp attention. But today, her mind moved between the present discussion and the conversation she had shared with Tom. She kept hearing his words. Peace begins inside the mind. She kept seeing the honest way he looked at her. Without fear or pride, when the meeting ended, Rena left the council chamber quickly. She returned to the learning terrace, and as she hoped, Tom was there. Waiting quietly under the glowing tree, he bowed as she approached. Empress Rena sat on the stone bench beside him. Tell me more about your teachers, Tom. They shaped the calmness you carry. I want to know who they were. Tom took a thoughtful breath. One was my mentor at the academy. He taught that leadership begins with listening. Another was an elder in my community. He believed that true strength is shown in peaceful actions, not loud ones. They did not know each other, but their lessons were similar. I learned from both. Rena listened carefully, feeling each word settle inside her like soft drops of rain. She asked more questions. Tom answered each one with honesty and clarity. They spoke for a long time, longer than she expected. And with every passing moment, Rena felt something changing inside her. She was not only curious anymore, she respected him deeply. When the sun began to lower in the sky, the terrace glowed with warm orange light. Rena stood and looked at Tom with a calm expression. Tom, thank you for your honesty. I have learned much today. More than I expected. Tom placed his hand over his heart. I am glad to help, Empress. Rena hesitated, then said quietly, I am beginning to see things differently because of you. Tom's eyes softened, but he did not speak. He simply bowed again. Rena walked away from the terrace with slow, thoughtful steps. Her mind felt clearer than it had in days. She now understood one simple truth. Tom was not just a visitor. He was a mirror, showing her the parts of herself she had forgotten, and for the first time in many years, Empress Rena felt her heart open to something new, something she had not expected, something peaceful and steady. The sun on Lumeri Prime rose slowly over the crystal towers of the capital, turning the sky into soft shades of gold and blue. Empress Rena stood on the high balcony of her palace, watching the morning light reflect on the wide plains around the city. The air was calm and gentle, almost carrying a sense of change. She felt that the new day matched the new thoughts growing inside her. The alliance with Earth had taken shape faster than she expected, and now she had to guide it in the right direction. Tom, the human soldier who had changed her views, walked beside her. He had been invited to stay in the palace guest wing for several days to discuss the new plans between their peoples. Even though he did not speak loudly or try to impress her, his presence always felt steady and clear. She found comfort in that. Rena turned from the view and looked at him. Tom stood with his hands behind his back, waiting for her words. He always waited with patience. She had noticed that he never rushed her thoughts. She appreciated that deeply. Rena said that the council would gather again later in the day. They wanted to hear the first clear steps of the new alliance. She explained that her advisors were curious, some were hopeful, and a few were unsure. Tom listened to her carefully, showing no sign of worry. He simply nodded and told her that he would help in any way she needed. They walked back inside the palace hall. The wide floor of polished stone shined like water, and tall pillars rose on both sides with gentle carvings that showed the long history of Lumeri. Rena slowed her steps, thinking about the stories in those carvings. Traditionally, the Lumeri saw themselves as proud leaders of their region of space. They welcomed visitors, but rarely did they trust a new people so quickly. Rena knew that her new choice would be unusual for many citizens. Tom noticed her thoughtful expression and asked if she was worried about the council. Rena said she was not worried, but she wanted the meeting to be strong and honest. She wanted her people to see that Earth could be a true partner. Tom replied that honesty was something he could always give. She smiled at that answer. Simple words, yet filled with meaning. The Empress led him to a smaller room where the first discussions would take place. It was a quiet space with soft chairs, a round table, and warm lights that created a calm atmosphere. It was designed to encourage open talks. Rena sat down and asked Tom to join her. She began reviewing the points they would present to the council. The list included peaceful trade, cultural programs, scientific exchange, and shared aid for any region in need. She had deliberately avoided any mention of military cooperation for now. She wanted trust to grow on foundations of learning and understanding, not weapons. Tom agreed with that direction. He said that humans had learned the hard way that peace grew stronger through knowledge. Rena listened carefully and felt once again that he spoke with deep sincerity. She had heard many speeches from trained diplomats in her life. But Tom spoke with simple truth, and that truth carried strength. She wondered how many human soldiers had that way of thinking. She wanted to learn more about them. As the morning passed, they discussed how to present each idea. Tom described how human communities worked and how they approached partnership. Rena explained how Lumeri culture valued respect and wisdom. She also told him how her people saw silence and calmness as signs of strength. Tom found that interesting, saying that in human societies those qualities were often admired but not always expected. After some time, the Empress called for a short break. They walked into the palace gardens, where silver leaves shimmered in the wind and small glowing flowers opened to the sunlight. Tom looked around with quiet wonder, admiring the plants that grew only on Lumeri Prime. A few small creatures hopped through the grass, leaving trails of soft light. It was a peaceful place and seemed to fit perfectly with the alliance they were forming. Rena watched Tom observe the garden. She realized that she had become curious about him as a person, not just as a representative of Earth. She had mocked him during their first meeting, but now she felt sorry for that. She had misunderstood him, and she had underestimated the dignity he carried. It was rare for an Empress to admit such things, even to herself. But she was glad she had changed. Tom turned to her and said the garden was beautiful. He asked if she came there often. Rena said she visited when she needed calm thoughts. Tom replied that the place felt peaceful. He walked a little farther, stopping near a tall tree with wide glowing branches. He asked if the light came naturally or through some special care. Rena explained that the tree carried its own inner energy. She said it had been growing for many generations and symbolized harmony. Among all living things, Tom placed a hand gently on the tree trunk. He said that humans also had places that symbolized peace. He spoke of quiet forests on Earth, long rivers that flowed calmly, and wide fields under clear skies. Rena listened with interest. She liked hearing about Earth from someone who had seen it with his own eyes. As they returned to the meeting room, Rena thought about the difference between her expectations and reality. She remembered that she once believed humans were loud and reckless. Now she knew that their strength came from patience and hope. She wondered how she would explain this new understanding to her council. Soon it was time for the official gathering. The Grand Council chamber filled with advisors, scholars, and representatives from different regions of Lumeri. The large crystal circle in the center glowed brightly as the Empress entered. Tom walked beside her with calm steps. The room grew silent. Rena greeted them and began to speak. She explained that the old stories about humans were only pieces of a far larger truth. She said that the world had changed, and now they had a chance to build a future based on trust. She introduced Tom again, describing his patience, honesty, and respectful nature. Some of the council looked surprised. Others nodded with interest. Tom stepped forward and greeted the council with a polite bow. He spoke in simple, steady words. He said that Earth wished for friendship, not power. He talked about the value of learning from each other. He described how humans had grown stronger through cooperation. The room stayed quiet as he talked. Even those who were unsure listened closely. When he finished, Rena continued. She explained the first steps of the alliance. Trade of knowledge. Exchange of science and art. Programs that would allow young learners from both worlds to study together. Assistance for smaller communities in need. Every point was clear and peaceful. After the presentation, the council began to speak. A few advisors asked questions. They wondered how Earth could support the alliance. Tom answered gently and honestly. Others asked how Lumeri culture would be respected. Rena assured them it would be protected. More advisors spoke in favor of the plan. Some were still unsure, but their concerns were calm and thoughtful. The discussion lasted a long time. Slowly, the atmosphere grew warmer. The council members started to see that the alliance was not a risk, but an opportunity. They saw that the human soldier who had stood silently before them was not weak, but strong in a quiet way. They saw that their Empress believed deeply in this new path. Finally, the council voted. The decision passed with strong support. Rena felt a wave of relief and pride. She looked at Tom, who gave a small, respectful nod. Their efforts had succeeded. The first foundation of the alliance was now set. After the meeting, the Empress invited Tom to the palace balcony once again. The sky was turning warm with evening colors. Birds moved across the horizon with gentle wings. Rena told Tom that the alliance had passed. He smiled softly, pleased but not boastful. She thanked him for his role in this new chapter. She said that his calm strength had changed her view of humans. Tom replied that he was honored to help and that he believed their worlds could grow together. Rena felt a new feeling rise in her chest. It was respect, but also something more. She felt admiration for him, not for his title or position, but for the person he was. She hoped he would stay longer, not just for official work, but to share more of his ideas and thoughts. She wondered if he felt the same, but she did not ask. She preferred to wait and let time show the answer. She did not need rushed words. Tom looked over the city and said that Lumeri Prime was beautiful. He hoped to see more of it before he returned to Earth. Rena told him she would show him the places that mattered most to her. She wanted to guide him herself, not through formal tours. He accepted with gratitude. As the evening wind moved around them, the Empress stood silently beside him. For the first time in many years, she felt that the future was wide and filled with promise. She felt that change had come in a gentle and respectful form, carried by a human soldier who had walked with calm steps and steady strength. Their alliance had begun not through pressure, but through understanding. And now 2 worlds were ready to grow side by side. The Empress and the soldier stood together on the balcony, looking at the horizon. Neither spoke, yet both knew that something new had started. Their path forward was peaceful, hopeful, and full of possibility.